Hey, this is Ramon, channel is Alpha 4, and I would like to do a video on the parable of Lazarus and the rich man. From my point of view and from the Catholic point of view, what is being talked about here is not the literal hell or the literary hell of fiction, but instead this is a parable that is part of a string of parables explaining how wealth and greed distract a person away from being a good Christian. On my video, hell is a real place that doesn't exist. Jap Jacobson left me a comment and gave me a challenge. He wrote, "The rich man who woke up in the flames of hell. You can't refute that, Alpha 4 IV. I mean, Luke 16:27, where the rich man says to Abraham, 'I am suffering in this flame.' He asked for the cooling of his tongue by Lazarus." This is a reference to Luke chapter 16, verse 24. And what it actually says is this: "Then he cried and said, 'Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus, that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am tormented by this flame.'" Important to note that the word hell is never used here, even in the 7 different translations I referenced for this video, while the word that was used instead of hell is Hades, which is a Greek word substituted for the Hebrew word Sheol. Sheol being the word that was used to identify this place in the original language of these manuscripts. Sheol was the place of the dead, which was a kind of limbo for both the righteous and the damned while they awaited their final judgment. Also, the word Sheol has been translated as netherworld or place of torment in different translations of this parable. One reason why this place of torment or place of fire is not hell is that both men, the good and the wicked, are in the same place, just far off from each other. Nor is this Hades the mythical hell of modern folklore, for the rich man can still converse with Saint Abraham, who here is representing heaven, as Abraham's bosom is a known Jewish metaphor for heaven. Abraham representing heaven here is all the more telling because he obeyed God without the aid of the Mosaic law or the benefit of the Hebrew Bible's other writings. We can also conclude that this place of torment is not hell because the unbelieving sinner is interceding for his still living brothers. For Catholics, this would be evidence that this man is most likely in purgatory. As for the identity of the lead characters of the story, Lazarus, the rich man, and Abraham, first, this is not the Lazarus of John chapter 11. And while in most modern accounts, the rich man has no name, in the oldest existing versions of this text, the rich man is named Nineveh or Dives. The purple that the rich man was wearing means that he was of royalty. And Abraham is called father by the rich man. And the rich man requests that Abraham send Lazarus to his father's house, meaning that Abraham represents heaven and his father's house represents Israel, to warn his brothers, that is, to warn his fellow Israelites. Instead of being an example of what happens after you die, this is a parable about the importance of hospitality to a stranger. And therefore, its details of the afterlife should not be taken literally. This parable is part of a longer list of narrative and conceptual proofs that state that Christians cannot mix service to God with the pursuit of wealth. For instance, to paraphrase John Christensen, here, buried and dead do not so much mean a literal death, as much as the rich man has been killed by his sin, and is buried in his own flesh, that is, in his own desires. Another metaphor or allegory to notice that doesn't get highlighted often are the dogs. Notice that the dogs are merciful and comfort the poor man. The dogs here could represent the Gentiles or the lower class peasants and untouchables of that time in Jewish society. The dogs licking Lazarus's wounds, being a mercy, is paralleled in Lazarus dipping his own finger in water, being a mercy to the rich man, suggesting that a mercy on or done to another is also a mercy to oneself. It's also important to note that the rich man's plea for all his guilt and torment is not rejected. Abraham calls the rich man his son and is compassionate to him, even though the rich man is also a wretched man. Yet, something still divides them. But the great gulf here is not geographical, but a spiritual divide. The separation between virtue and wickedness. This unbridgeable gulf is a literary allusion back to the gate which the rich man could but never did open. It was unopenable and unbridgeable to him by his own doing, not because it could not be opened, as Jesus will cross to and back from Sheol and then to heaven. Also notice that the rich man's torments do not change the rich man's heart, as he still sees Lazarus as a servant who is below him. This torment is not so much punishment, but a balancing of the scales, as this rich man received what was good, his rewards, during his lifetime, while Lazarus received what was bad, or the equivalent torment, during his lifetime. If this story is to be taken literally, which the church fathers advise against, as to them it is clearly a parable. But if you must view it literally to believe and maintain your faith, then the church fathers advise you to view the events as taking place before the second coming of Christ and after each man's mortal death. The advice of heaven to those still living is to listen to Moses, that is the Torah, and to the prophets, that is the writings. For even if a man should rise from the dead, they, the many, still would not listen nor change their ways. This parable is also a prophecy about the rejection of repentance by people, even after the resurrection. For there is an obvious reference to Jesus at the end of this parable. Please like and subscribe. I hope you guys like this video. Please comment down below if you have any comments, or you have any questions. I'll gladly respond to them. And I hope you enjoyed this video. And thank you, Jacobson, for your comment. And I hope you enjoyed this reply.